So there's been just a lot going on the past few weeks, and obviously we're kind of ramping things up for Alpha, and having a lot of conversations about that. In fact, if you are part of an Alpha host team, this Tuesday we are having host teams meetings, or a host team meeting at my house at 7 p.m. And if you need directions, just let me know, and I'll be glad to provide those for you. But also, Cheryl or Diane, they also have information as well. So you can check in with them if you have any questions. But one of the things that's kind of been happening is, there's been kind of several of us that have just been in different conversations about where we want to be as a church and as a community. And Cheryl, Shannon, and I especially had a really big conversation about that and outlined a few things that we just want to see happen over the next, I don't know, we're going to talk about that. Just things that we want to see happen and positive changes that we want to make. And so the next step is we're going to talk about how to do that and how to make those positive changes. And so I just want to ask you guys to be praying about that and asking the Lord what that might look like and what He envisions for Vineyard to be, And in kind of this whole process, I've been thinking a lot about leadership, and especially my own leadership, because, we have to do that every once in a while. We come to this place where we're like, am I what I need to be, who I need to be? Am I doing what I need to do to be the most effective and to use the things that God has given me to do what He's also asking me to do, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about leadership lessons, and I'm going to kind of subtitle it that I'm leadership lessons that I'm still learning, right? Okay. I don't know about you, but I actually haven't met a perfect leader yet, and so I'm kind of thankful for that. That in the Vineyard, especially, we kind of talk about that we are leaders with a limp. That all of us still have our weaknesses and our insecurities and our things that we're still working out and working through, and that will never be completely ironed out until that day that we see Jesus, right? So I hope that you guys will have a lot of grace for me as a leader, and I'll give the same grace to you guys as we lead together. But this morning I especially want to talk about kind of this topic of what leadership really is from a Christian perspective, from God's perspective, or what I believe that it is. And so I'll do my best to speak from His perspective. But have you guys ever had someone, when you think back on your life, is there someone that really, really poured a lot into you? Someone that was just really a mentor, that kind of knew you, that maybe knew your limps and was able to kind of speak to those things. And, as I think about it, that could be a number of different things, right? A number of different people. It could be a parent. It could be a spiritual leader. I know God put at one season in my life some spiritual parents in my life. I lived with them for a little while I was in college, and they really poured into me. It could be a pastor. It could be a teacher. Just anybody. Who comes to your mind when you think of people that have really poured into your life? This is an open mic time. So, who comes to your mind? Merle? Yeah, absolutely. Man, I'm so thankful for him. Every time he walks in the doors here, and I know that he's praying, Like, there is so much power and influence in that. Absolutely.
Tom Moore.
What's that? Tom Moore? Absolutely.
You.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm humbled. Thank you.
Cheryl Hilbers.
Cheryl. This is awesome because, like, I wasn't even thinking, like, specific people, you know? Like, I was thinking, like, pastor. I mean, you guys are naming people that I know. That's, like, powerful, you know? Very cool. Anyone else? Anybody have a teacher that was just really influential in your life? Brian? Your mom? So cool. Man, there's people in this room that have had a powerful influence someday. So, good. I'm sure all of you guys hopefully have somebody that comes to your mind. One person for me was a pastor in my life. Actually, for Shannon and I both. His name was Pastor Jeff. And, there was a time in my life where I felt like other people kind of wrote me off sometimes. Has anybody else felt like that before? Like they didn't see you for who you felt like they didn't see you for who you were, or maybe they didn't recognize the giftings that you had or the talents or that kind of thing, and so you just felt like they kind of passed you by. Pastor Jeff never did that. In fact, he saw in me and Shannon like this hunger for more of the things of God, and so recognizing that, he just started pouring everything that he could into us. And anybody else that was in that same state, he'd pull us together and he would teach us. He would take advantage of every opportunity to pour those things into us. We were always learning. And I mean, this is how hungry I was. Like at the time, we were like front row people, Shannon and I both. And we always took notes on everything that he said. We were always writing it down. Like we were really, really super hungry. In fact, Shannon has notebooks of Pastor Jeff's messages and things that he taught us. And he always said these like cool kind of quips and quotes. And she's like, even to this day, she's like, I am going to put together a book of those quips and quotes that he gave us, just really had a strong influence. And, last week, then, we kind of started down this path. And one of the things that we talked about is the difference between being a host and a guest. And I just want to reiterate that for those of you that maybe weren't here last week. Because there's a difference, if you think about it, between hosting a party and being a guest at a party, right? And this is the way that I think of leadership as well. A host invites others to the party, right? A guest waits to be invited. A host is concerned about the atmosphere of the party, right? They want to make sure that everybody's having a good time, that everybody's feeling welcomed, that everybody's feeling like they're a part, where the guest kind of waits to be, unless they're a major extrovert, right? But like usually you're kind of getting to know people and you're a little more cautious and that kind of thing. I believe in the kingdom party that God wants us, all of us here, to be hosts in this party. All of us to be hosts. And when you do that, it shifts your mindset. And I'm not just talking about here in church, although I hope that you'll be invitational. I hope that you'll be welcoming here at church. And I'm not just talking about, hosting an alpha group, but I'm talking about the whole thing, the kingdom life, the fact that we are Christ's ambassadors. And when we are ambassadors to everybody that is not following Christ, like that should really shift our perspective on everything that we do. And ultimately, leadership is defined as influence, right? And every single one of us in this place, we have the ability and the opportunity to influence. You have the ability and the opportunity to influence others. Now, that's not always going to be at the same level, right? God's not calling all of us to be a Martin Luther King Jr., okay? Or a Mother Teresa. Those are always my go-tos, like amazing people. Sometimes he's calling us to be a parent and to be an influencer in that way, or a spouse, or a manager, or even a friend can be an influence. I always prayed for Emily, like, God, make her a godly woman of influence. A godly woman of influence. I just wanted her to have more influence on others than they had on her. Especially, having a godly influence on others, right? Even if you're not in a position of leadership, I want you to think about what kind of influence do you have with your life? What kind of influence has God given you? Who are the people that He has put around you in your circles, no matter how small or no matter how big? Who has He given you to influence, and what kind of influence are you having on them? So I want to share 3 thoughts today on leadership that I believe the Lord wants me to share with you. And the first is that leadership has very few boundaries. It has very few boundaries. He's given you these circles of influence, and He wants you to work within them. Also, leadership has little to do with age. Age is absolutely no boundary there. We all have the responsibility of leadership no matter what our age. And the truth is that every single generation needs somebody within that generation to rise up as a leader, right? And so I think of Paul. And Paul was mentoring Timothy, who was younger. And hopefully we've all read the books, the letters that he wrote to Timothy. So much wisdom, so much advice that he gives to him. But this is one of the things that he shares. 1 Timothy 4:12, it says this: "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young." Do not let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. He said it doesn't matter that you're young. You've been given an influence. And your life should be an example to everyone around you. In what you say, in the way that you act, in the way that you respect others, in the way that you respond to God, and in the way you manage your life. He says all of that in that one sentence there, in that one thing that he wrote to Timothy. Paul also instructed Titus. Titus was another young man, a Greek man, who at some point responded to Paul's message about Jesus and began to be a follower of Jesus. And Paul told Titus to teach the older men and women to be influencers of the younger men and women. Okay, so first of all, here's this young man, and he's asking the young man to teach the older men and women, right? But what is he asking them to do? To teach the younger as role models in their own self-discipline, as well as in teaching them how to live. And that's in Titus 2. So some of us, we know the Bible. We've been around the block a little bit. We've been to church. We've heard all the stories multiple times. Like I just read that verse, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young. I don't know about you guys, but I've heard that verse about 100 times already. It's not like new to me, And for those of us that's us, that we've been around the block, that by no means that God is finished with us. It just means we have a shift of focus and a shift of our role, a role change, that we become leaders and role models of those who are younger and need to learn what God has already given to us. Can I get an amen to that? Amen. All right. If you don't know if you're younger or older, by the way, no worries. I don't know about you. I'm going to go with the younger for now until that time I know I fall into the older category. Just pick a side, If you're younger, I hope that